Hello and welcome to the Haaretz Podcast. I'm Allison Kaplan-Summer in Tel Aviv. One thing we know already about 2026, it is going to be a very political year. Israel will be holding its elections, and in the United States, with midterm elections coming up in November, the primary politics in various states are already heating up. In San Francisco, they are already red hot. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's retirement announcement immediately opened up a seat in a congressional district in one of the most solidly Democrat and left-leaning cities in the United States. And in the spotlight of the contest between three candidates to replace her came the issue of whether or not Israel's actions in the Gaza war should be defined as genocide. The controversy over the word was triggered at the end of a candidates forum earlier this month, in which there was a lightning round where the three candidates were asked to hold up green and red yes or no cards in answers to questions. One of the questions was this:
Is Israel committing genocide in Gaza?
Two of the candidates immediately held up green yes signs. The third, the candidate who was first to throw his hat in the ring in the campaign, State Senator Scott Wiener, kept his sign down on his lap, refusing to lift it up and uncomfortably flipping it around, staring straight ahead, expressionless. And the crowd exploded with boos and jeers. In the aftermath of the incident, facing a fierce backlash for his refusal to charge Israel with genocide, Wiener made a rapid U-turn, posting this video on social media. This is what he said.
For those of you who saw the debate clip from last week, I want to clarify that I do believe Israel has committed genocide in Gaza, and I want to explain why I hesitated at the debate. For the past 2 years, I have harshly opposed Israel's escalations in Gaza, and I've used phrases like total destruction and catastrophic levels of death and moral stain. But I haven't used the word genocide, and I want to explain why. As a Jew, I am deeply aware that the word genocide was created in the wake of the Holocaust, which was the industrial extermination of 6 million Jews. For many Jews, associating the word genocide with the Jewish state of Israel is deeply painful and frankly traumatic. But despite that pain and that trauma, we all have eyes, and we see the absolute devastation and catastrophic death toll in Gaza inflicted by the Israeli government. And we all have ears, and we hear the genocidal statements by certain senior members of the Israeli government. And to me, the Israeli government has tried to destroy Gaza and to push Palestinians out, and that qualifies as genocide.
What was he really thinking when he didn't lift up his sign? And why did Wiener change his mind and decide to accept the word genocide? We'll find out in my conversation with State Senator Scott Wiener coming up.
I'm Esther Solomon, Editor-in-Chief of Haaretz English. Around the world, the fight is on to preserve critical and independent media. Haaretz, Israel's oldest newspaper, upholds its long tradition of accurate, committed, and incisive journalism, refusing to bend its reporting to pressure from any government or leader. A digital subscription to Haaretz gives you up-to-the-minute news and analysis in English from journalists who live Israel's reality and are committed to covering the Middle East and its global repercussions. At the same time, your subscription supports the cause of a free press that holds the powerful to account in Israel and around the world. I invite you to become a subscriber to Haaretz now. Just go to Haaretz.com and use the code Haaretz10, that's Haaretz with the number 10, for 10% off an annual subscription.
State Senator Scott Wiener, contender for House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's congressional seat. Welcome to the Haaretz Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Senator, you have a solid reputation for getting things done locally in California. You are a proud member and leader of the LGBT community. You have stood up strongly against President Trump, and yet you seem to be playing defense at the very opening of your campaign. Were you aware in real time on that stage how much of a problem not holding up that sign definitively was going to be for you?
I did not anticipate that they were going to ask the question in that way, sort of game show style, hold up a yes or no sign for something as incredibly serious, deadly serious, as whether a genocide has occurred. We know the level of death in Gaza has been extraordinary, and I did not anticipate that. But in retrospect, yes, of course, that was going to become a big thing because that kind of video was going to go viral. It was like a made for Hollywood kind of moment, very clippable, and that's the kind of world we live in right now. Everything goes viral.
I guess you can comfort yourself right now with the knowledge that you're not alone, because the governor of your state, Governor Gavin Newsom, is now being attacked for hosting Ben Shapiro on his podcast and stating that he does not believe Israel committed genocide in Gaza. He had the luxury of not having to have a yes or no answer. The governor said he, quote, understands why images and proportionality lead some to that view. He tried for this nuanced approach, but it really seems to be a Democratic litmus test or purity test, whatever you want to call it, at least in California. Does it seem strange to you that this one word is now a make or break issue?
Well, listen, I think we have to look at the big picture here. And for those who have followed my statements on Israel's operations in Gaza and in the West Bank, they will know that I have, opposed the escalations from early on. And I've used very, very stark language that, frankly, has not been particularly different from genocide. I chose not to use the word genocide for a variety of reasons, because, first of all, it has been weaponized against Israel and against Jews over time. There are people who believe that Israel's existence is a genocide. There were people claiming genocide on October 7th and October 8th, when it was actually Hamas that was being genocidal at that moment in time. And so it's a really fraught word, and a word that means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And so, it's not surprising that there are people, and I definitely was in this category, to say, hey, let's use different words that are frankly equivalent, but not the word genocide itself. And that became untenable. And it has become a word that has taken on more and more meaning. A lot of people believe a genocide has been committed.
Why the switch? Why the decision to make the video that you posted on social media saying that you do believe it's a genocide?
Well, there are some people who said, "Oh, you flipped." I never flipped. I had never even made any statements on whether it was a genocide before the video. I had made very, very strong statements using language like moral stain, cratering an entire population, absolute destruction. I called it a shanda. So I had used very, very strong words, but had never talked about genocide. And in that debate, I did not raise the yes card. I didn't raise the no card either. And part of it was that I thought it was not appropriate to answer such an incredibly important question with sort of a game show style yes or no. But I also was not going to answer no, because I do think that what the Israeli government has done in Gaza has been just horrific. And so I was not prepared to answer that question in that, I thought, flip kind of way. And ultimately, afterwards, doing a lot of introspection, talking to a lot of people with many differing points of view, I decided that given that I had used equivalent words and come so close to calling it a genocide, that it made sense for me just to say what I believe it is. And I understand there are a lot of people who disagree with me, a lot of people in my own community who strongly disagree with me, who are upset with me for saying it, who feel hurt and betrayed, and I respect and honor that. But I also believe that we have a responsibility to call this what I believe it is, understanding that there are people who strongly disagree with me.
You said you've reached out to Jewish Bay Area leaders before the video came out and said you had conversations about the decision. Can you take us inside the room and talk about what those conversations were like?
Yeah, so before and after many, many, many conversations, I've been deeply involved in the San Francisco Jewish community for many years. And so some of these folks are people I've worked with for decades and I have close relationships with and whom I admire, and it's been arranged. And a lot of people have reached out to me too. First of all, we need to acknowledge there's a range of views within the Jewish community about everything that happened in Gaza, including whether it's a genocide. And we know from polling that a pretty sizable chunk of Jews believe it's a genocide. We also know that many do not. And those conversations have really ranged. Some people have expressed support. Some people have said, I don't agree with you, but I respect what you said because it's horrific what Netanyahu's government has done in Gaza. And others have said, I strongly disagree with you, but I still support you. Some have really said to me that they feel hurt by what I said. And I think one of the reasons why this has struck a nerve in the San Francisco Jewish community, the Bay Area Jewish community, California Jewish community, is because I've held a leadership role in our legislative Jewish caucus I'm in my 6th year of leadership, which is way longer than I ever thought I would hold this role. And the reason why I am still in this role as co-chair of our Jewish caucus in the 6th year is that the community has been in crisis since October 7th. And so I felt an obligation to stay because of the work that we were doing confronting anti-Semitism here in California. And I have fought very, very hard for the community locally in the face of some extreme anti-Semitism targeting local businesses on college campuses in San Francisco and our public schools. And I've taken a lot of slings and arrows because of my work fighting anti-Semitism and have just a very close relationship with our community in that fight. And so there are people, because of the leadership I've shown, who are very upset with me for taking this view. But the reality is that over the last 2.5 years, since October 7th, before October 7th, but certainly since, I have been fighting very, very hard and very vocal against anti-Semitism locally and taken a lot of bullets for doing that. At the same time, I have been intensely oppositional and critical of the Israeli government's extreme escalations in Gaza and also what they are allowing to happen in the West Bank. So two things can be true, and I have been very, very consistent over time.
I don't want to project an identity crisis on you, but you are also such a prominent leader of the LGBT community. And after the video came out, you announced big endorsements from major Democratic clubs, Alice B. Toklas Democratic Club and United Democratic Club. Do you feel like those endorsements were contingent on what you said in that video?
No, not at all. Not at all. Both of those, and those are two of our largest Democratic clubs. I have worked with both of them for a long, long time, and those endorsements were well in process before any of this happened. So no, there was no link between the two.
On the identity crisis piece, I mean, again, the LGBT community is so clearly in a certain place when it comes to Gaza and the mainstream Jewish community, which you've worked with so closely, and it's basically your background, right? Feels a certain way about Israel. Do you feel personally, emotionally torn on this issue?
I think that the LGBTQ community gets a little broad brushed on this issue. Like the Jewish community, the LGBTQ community is extremely diverse, and so there are certainly folks in the community who are quite anti-Israel, and there are many LGBTQ people who are not. And in fact, there are a lot of Jewish LGBTQ people. I know a whole bunch of them who also have a range of views on the issue. So the community is quite diverse. When I was up for re-election to the Senate in 2024, there was one of the two LGBTQ Democratic clubs, which historically has not supported me very much, but did endorse me for my re-election in 2024. Some people targeted me there, and they stripped my endorsement over Gaza, because even though I had been oppositional, I had opposed the escalations. I guess they thought I hadn't opposed it enough, and they did not strip endorsements from Nancy Pelosi or Kevin Mullen, our two members of Congress who actually have roles in foreign policy and whose positions have not been meaningfully different than mine. They targeted my endorsement, and that was very painful. But that I don't think that represents the entire community.
The Israeli Consul General for the Pacific Northwest, Marco Sermonetta, posted that he was disappointed and saddened that you disgracefully chose to abandon facts and amplify Hamas propaganda to score political points. By doing so, he said that you perpetuate a vile blood libel against Israel, whose citizens were the target of Hamas's stated genocidal intentions, and emboldened the extremists who endanger Jews in California. The JCRC, the community organization for the Jewish community in the Bay Area, said that you were lacking in moral clarity. You mentioned that you are co-chair of the California Legislative Jewish Caucus. You've written state laws reducing anti-Semitism. Do you feel all of that good work is being wiped away by the establishment Jewish community because of your endorsement of that one word, genocide?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I have no issue whatsoever with with JCRC or other Jewish community organizations, or with Consul General of Israel disagreeing with me. It's a democracy. I'm a grown-up. I put on my big boy pants, and I take plenty of criticism and opposition, and that's totally normal and appropriate. Some of those statements I thought were, shall we say, unfortunate. I paid a significant political and personal price for my vocal fight against anti-Semitism in San Francisco. When people, over the last 2.5 years, when there are problems significant anti-Semitism problems, for example, at UCSF, or at San Francisco Unified School District, or at San Francisco State University, the parents or the folks at UCSF or folks at San Francisco State, when they have issues, they come to me, right? They come to me, and I never say no, and I get involved, and I'm vocal, and I paid a price for that. And you know what? I would do it all over again. I'm proud of the work we've done against anti-Semitism in San Francisco, even though there is always going to be a price to be paid for that kind of vocal leadership. And so nothing can wipe away that work. And there are plenty of people who have said to me, I disagree with you, but I appreciate the work that you've done. For anyone who decides to forget about that work, shame on them. And so with the Consul General's statement, calling it a blood libel and saying I'm spreading Hamas propaganda, that's absurd. And also saying I lack moral clarity, again, you can disagree all you want. That's a really unfortunate and unfounded statement. But I also understand people are upset. One sort of big picture, I've talked about this to a lot of leaders in the Jewish community over the last few weeks as we've discussed this. Whatever your view is on whether this is a genocide, when you look at the polling, and I've not seen polling in San Francisco or California, so I can't speak to that. I have seen, and we've all seen, the polling nationally over the last year or so. And one half of Americans believe it's a genocide. 77% of Democrats believe it's a genocide, 40% of Jews. And so you can disagree with that. You can say, well, it's a legal, technical doctrine, and here are the elements. And, I believe that one can say, one can conclude it doesn't meet the standards. That's their right. But so many people believe it is. And I think that this word has grown. It's no longer just a technical legal doctrine. It's a descriptor that people use to describe extreme levels of massacre, of death, of destruction.
The implication with genocide, with its connection to the Holocaust, is that intentional. So people say by using that word, you believe that Israel was deliberately massacring en masse Palestinians in Gaza.
Yeah, so when you look at what's happened in Gaza, and again, this is what a lot of people perceive. It is an awful lot of people died. You look at Gaza itself, it's like a moonscape. You have and when especially when you bring in the West Bank, but also in Gaza, not just statements, but actions that look like ethnic cleansing. And you have undeniably genocidal statements by senior members of Netanyahu's government over and over again. People look at the totality of it. It looks like a genocide. And we all, and I understand the extreme sensitivity in the Jewish community, in my community, about the use of that word because of the Holocaust. And when people have, there are some activists that have tried to start calling Gaza the Holocaust, which I think is incredibly offensive, and that has never gotten traction. The Holocaust, has its own unique name that only that genocide of our people, 6 million Jews, industrially exterminated, is called. We know that the word genocide is much broader. In fact, there were, when you look at Srebrenica, that was a dramatically smaller number of people that were killed, and that was classified as a genocide. We have, various genocides that have occurred and that are occurring. We look at the Uyghurs in China. So it is a word that is, I think, sometimes broader than people imagine, and it has certainly taken on a broader definition in the public mind. And then in addition to just what people think, we know the International Court of Justice is right now considering whether the Israeli government's actions in Gaza constitute a genocide. We know that in 2024, the court issued a preliminary ruling not deciding, but indicating that there was some indication that it could be, and directing Israel to take action to avoid it. And so whenever the court rules, I don't know when it will, if it'll be in 6 or 12 or 18 months or longer, there is a reasonable possibility that the International Court of Justice will rule that this is a genocide or some form of genocide. And again, people can then agree or disagree with that. People can love or hate the ICJ. People can think that the ICJ is fair or unfair. That's people's right to have those views. But if the ICJ makes that ruling, and we have public opinion, the public believing that it's a genocide, how should the Jewish community process that? Right? People can continue to say, no, it's wrong. It's a moral stain. It's a moral stain that half of Americans and 77% of Democrats say it's a genocide. It's a moral stain that the ICJ perhaps will rule that it's a genocide. It's all a blood libel. It's all Hamas propaganda. People can have those views, but that doesn't change the reality of what people think and what the ICJ very well may rule, which is what will likely go into the history books. And in my view, the institutional Jewish community in this country has not grappled with that reality and potential reality. And the one last thing I'll say is, it's very interesting in these many conversations I've had, including with people who agree with what I said, and a lot of people who disagree, they have used phrases which were, it's just very surprising to me that they use these words, because I don't think they would have 6 or 9 months ago. Yeah, there's been ethnic cleansing, but it's not a genocide. Yeah, there's been war crimes, but it's not a genocide. Yes, they destroyed Gaza, but it's not a genocide. Yes, senior government officials have made genocidal statements, but it's not actually a genocide. The fact that there are people who I guarantee you 6 or 9 months ago would not have used those phrases are now using them, show that regardless of what word we put on it, and I do agree that we should not be holding people to purity tests about you must use this exact word or that exact word. People should be able to describe horrific situations in the words that make sense for them and for their heart without being berated. But this is what so many people think. And even if they're not using genocide and they're saying ethnic cleansing and destruction and war crimes and so on and so forth, there's something there, and we need to grapple with it and not just dismiss it as a moral stain or blood libel or Hamas propaganda.
Broadening out to the wider issue of Israel and the Jewish community and the fight against anti-Semitism, do you feel like we've reached a point now in the United States where any form of connection and affinity to the state of Israel because of Gaza, because of the use of the word genocide or the widespread belief that Israel committed genocide, that any connection, affinity, positive relationship with the state of Israel is now viewed as inherently morally wrong? And if so, where does that leave the American Jewish community, which, undeniably is going to have a tie to Israel for both religious, historic, cultural, and often family reasons?
Yeah, and I fall in that category. I've been to Israel numerous times, including for, both my nephews were bar mitzvahed in Israel. I prayed at the Western Wall with my father. And so I was just interviewed by a local newspaper in San Francisco that was interviewing all the congressional candidates about a wide array of foreign policy positions. And on Israel, I was crystal clear. They asked me, would you go to Israel in a delegation? The answer is yes. Israel matters to Jews globally. Israel, and I say this all the time because I think people don't always recognize, I think Jews understand, but some non-Jews don't, that Israel is home to 1/2 of all Jews on the planet. That if you did a lottery and picked 2 random Jews out of the lottery on planet Earth, one of them lives in Israel. And so this Israel matters. And there are many Israelis that are not in agreement with this government. We have, in the United States, we have an absolute aspiring fascist authoritarian regime that's trying to just destroy democracy, put secret police with masks on the streets of American cities, shooting a mother of 3 in the face. This is what's happening in this country, shutting down university scientific research, trying to destroy media companies unless they bend the knee to the authoritarian. Horrible things happening. But the United States of America deeply matters in this world. And so you can have a bad government, and the Netanyahu government is a straight up horrible government. That is something that I think American Jews broadly agree on. And we need to get rid of that government. Israel needs to get rid of that government by not holding the Netanyahu government as accountable as we should be holding them. We, in some ways, undermine the ability of Jews and others in Israel to make change in their own country. And so I think so many of us want to see change in Israel. We want a government in Israel that's deeply committed to peace and democracy. And that's not what's happening now. I think it's really important for American Jews to be part of that solution. And I think so many want to be. But yes, there are people who will be like, how dare you go to Israel or have any kind of connection to Israel? And I just disagree with that. That's why I oppose BDS. BDS is a plan to try to destroy Israel, and that's not a road that I want to go down. And we need to push back. Two things can be true: you can hate the government, you can name what happened in Gaza for what it is, you can name what's happening in the West Bank for what it is, a form of ethnic cleansing, and support Israel's existence as the Jewish homeland, in addition to the home of 2 million Arab Israeli citizens.
As a candidate for the U.S. Congress, where does that put you on military aid to Israel?
I've been very clear since the day I entered the race. I believe that the U.S. should absolutely support Israel's defense, Iron Dome, David's Sling, and so forth. But I will not support U.S. funding for the destruction of Palestinian communities. And so I don't want to sell offensive arms to an Israeli government that is not committed to peace. And the Netanyahu government is not committed to peace. So that's where I stand on arms sales.
And what about Iran? There's been a lot of criticism, both in Israel and in the American Jewish community, that progressives who spoke out very strongly against Gaza are still speaking out very strongly about what's happening in Gaza, are not speaking out loud enough in support of the protests and the protesters in Iran, and are not supporting active American intervention in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the criticism that there are some progressives who are not speaking out loudly enough about what's happening in Iran. I've been very, very vocal, both a few years ago and now, with this, the fascist Iranian regime and what they're doing in terms of just massacring protesters and holding back an incredible country, incredible people. I will say, I have in recent days been seeing on my Instagram feed some very lefty young influencers who have been very, very, very pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel, who are now making videos saying, "Stop calling me a Zionist for supporting the people of Iran," and because they're getting attacked because they're being vocal on Iran, and people try to always tie it to Israel. It's what they do, tie everything to Israel. It's at times quite anti-Semitic, the whole notion of the Jews controlling the world and being behind the curtain and controlling everything. But I've been happy to see some of these sort of young progressive influencers who I follow, even though I don't always agree with them, not just speaking up against what the Iranian regime is doing, but also sort of slamming people for criticizing them for doing so. So that gives me hope that we can actually have a more unified front against the horror of what the Ayatollah and his government are doing.
State Senator Wiener, this has been really a fascinating conversation. Just to wrap up, I'd like to circle back to the genocide debate. You've said, I hope that over time we can move past it. Do you really believe that you can, that at some point you're going to be discussing bread and butter California issues like a regular congressional candidate, or that this discussion is going to stick with you through the primaries and probably through the general election?
No, I think we will be very much discussing the key issues that I work on, and that people really, people care about what's happening in Gaza, of course, but people really care about the issues that I've focused intensively on in the legislature, and that I will in Congress, around housing and healthcare affordability, and getting the cost of energy down, and investing in science, because Trump is trying to destroy scientific research because he's a Neanderthal. And so we are very much focusing on those critical issues. It's a congressional campaign, so foreign policy also matters, and we should be talking about Israel and Gaza and the West Bank, but there are so many other issues. In that debate, Gaza came up, and Venezuela. I wish Taiwan would come up, and the Uyghurs. I wish that Sudan would come up, or Ukraine, or Greenland. There are so many issues percolating, and foreign affairs does matter for Congress. I do have one of my opponents who is very obsessive about trying to go after me on these issues, and that'll continue. But that's fine. It's a congressional race, and we'll talk about a bunch of different issues.
State Senator Scott Wiener, thank you so much for so much of your time, and thanks so much for coming on the Haaretz Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
And that's it for this episode of the Haaretz Podcast. Thanks to my guest, State Senator Scott Wiener, and to my producer and editor, Adi Shacham. If you want to continue to listen to the podcast and make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe to us on Apple, on Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're so inclined, comment and leave us a 5-star rating, and that way more people can find us. And to keep up with all the latest news on Israel, the Middle East, and the Jewish world, don't forget to subscribe to and follow Haaretz.com. I'm Allison Kaplan-Summer, and until next time, shalom from Tel Aviv.